Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I hope you are doing great today and ready to improve your English in a powerful and practical way. Let me start today's lesson with a simple but confusing question. Which sentence is correct? If I was rich, I would travel the world. Or, if I were rich, I would travel the world. Have you ever felt confused between if I was and if I were? Many English learners use these expressions without understanding the real difference between them. Even native speakers sometimes mix them up in casual conversation. But today, by the end of this lesson, you will fully understand when to use if I was and when to use if I were. Today's lecture is going to be detailed, simple, engaging, and practical. We will discuss grammar, meaning, pronunciation, sentence structure, real-life examples, common mistakes, formal and informal usage, and much more. So stay with me until the end because this lesson can completely change the way you speak and write English. Let us begin. First of all, let us understand the basic difference between was and were. Both was and were are past forms of the verb to be. We normally say I was, he was, she was, it was, and we say you were, we were, they were. For example, I was tired yesterday. She was happy at the party. They were late for class. We were excited about the trip. This is basic past tense grammar. But the confusion begins when we use if. Why? Because if can talk about two different things. Number 1. Real situations. Number 2. Imaginary or unreal situations. This is where if I was and if I were become different. Let us understand this carefully. We use if I was when we are talking about something that may actually have happened in the past. We use if I were when we are talking about imaginary situations, impossible situations, dreams, wishes, or unreal conditions. This is called the subjunctive mood in English grammar. Do not worry about the difficult grammar name. Just focus on the meaning. Let us look at if I was first. If I was is used for possible or real past situations. For example, if I was rude yesterday, I apologize. This sentence means maybe I was rude. Maybe I really behaved badly yesterday. The speaker is talking about a real possibility. Another example. If I was late, it was because of traffic. Again, the speaker thinks it is possible that they were late. So, if I was talks about something real or possibly true in the past. Now let us move to if I were. If I were is used for unreal, imaginary, hypothetical, or impossible situations. For example, if I were a bird, I would fly across the world. Can the speaker become a bird? No, it is imaginary. Another example. If I were rich, I would buy a big house. Maybe the speaker is not rich right now. It is only a dream or hypothetical situation. That is why we use were instead of was. This is one of the most important rules in English grammar. When we imagine something unreal, we usually use were after if, even with I, he, and she. For example, if I were you, if he were here, if she were taller. This may sound strange because normally we say I was and he was. But in imaginary situations, English traditionally uses were. Now let us compare both expressions side by side. Listen carefully. If I was rude yesterday, I am sorry. This talks about a real possibility in the past. Now listen to this. If I were rude, people would dislike me. This is hypothetical. The speaker is not saying they are rude. They are imagining the situation. Can you feel the difference? One is real or possible. The other is imaginary or unreal. Now let us go deeper into the subjunctive mood. The subjunctive mood is used when we talk about wishes, dreams, impossible situations, suggestions, or hypotheticals. This is why we say, if I were king, if she were here, If he were taller. If I were you. These expressions are extremely common in English. Especially, if I were you. Native speakers use it all the time when giving advice. For example, if I were you, I would study harder. If I were you, I would not trust him. If I were you, I would take that opportunity. Notice something important. We never say, if I was you. In formal English, many people say it casually, but grammatically, if I were you, is considered correct because you cannot literally become another person. It is imaginary. Now let us discuss formal and informal English. In formal English, especially in writing, educated speech, academic English, and professional communication, if I were, is preferred for unreal situations. For example, if I were the manager, I would change the policy. This is formal and grammatically correct. But in casual spoken English, many native speakers also say, if I was the manager, especially in informal conversation. So if you hear people using, if I was, in movies or daily speech, do not get confused. Spoken English is often more relaxed. However, if you want to sound polished, professional, and grammatically strong, use, if I were, for imaginary situations. Now let us discuss some common sentence structures. Structure number 1. If plus subject plus were plus imaginary condition plus would plus result. For example, if I were rich, I would travel the world. If she were here, she would help us. If they were honest, they would tell the truth. This structure is called the second conditional. It talks about unreal or unlikely situations in the present or future. Now structure number 2. If plus subject plus was plus possible past situation. For example, if I was wrong, I apologize. If he was upset, I did not notice. If she was disappointed, she never showed it. These sentences talk about real possibilities. Now let us discuss pronunciation because pronunciation is important for your fluency. If I was. Pronunciation. If I was. If I were. Pronunciation. If I were. The word, were, is usually pronounced softly in connected speech. For example, if I were you, sounds like, if I were you. Practice this sentence several times because it is very common in English conversation. Now let us discuss emotional meaning. Sometimes, if I were, sounds more thoughtful, imaginative, or emotional. For example, if I were invisible, I would travel anywhere secretly. This sentence creates imagination. Another example, if I were a child again, I would enjoy life more. This sentence creates emotion and reflection. That is why songs, poetry, movies, and literature often use, if I were. You may know the famous song title, If I Were a Boy, by Beyoncé. Notice it says, were, not, was, because the singer is imagining an unreal situation. Now let us discuss 5 examples of, if I was. Example number 1. If I was rude during the meeting, I sincerely apologize. Meaning, maybe I behaved rudely. The speaker accepts the possibility. Example number 2. If I was unclear, let me explain again. Meaning, perhaps the speaker did not explain properly. Example number 3. If I was late yesterday, it was because my car broke down. Meaning, the speaker thinks being late was possible. Example number 4. If I was too harsh, I did not mean to hurt anyone. Meaning, the speaker reflects on a real past action. Example number 5. If I was mistaken, please correct me. Meaning, the speaker admits they may have made a mistake. Now let us move to 5 examples of, if I were. Example number 1. If I were rich, I would build schools for poor children. Meaning, the speaker is imagining being rich. Example number 2. If I were you, I would accept the job offer. Meaning, the speaker gives advice. Example number 3. If I were a doctor, I would help people for free. Meaning, the speaker imagines another profession. Example number 4. If I were taller, I would play basketball professionally. Meaning, The speaker imagines a different physical condition. Example number 5. If I were the president, I would improve education. Meaning, the speaker imagines having political power. Now let us discuss some very common mistakes. Mistake number 1. Using was instead of were in imaginary situations. Incorrect. If I was you, I would leave. Correct. If I were you, I would leave. Mistake number 2. Using were for real past situations. Incorrect. If I were late yesterday, I apologize. Correct. If I was late yesterday, I apologize. Because this talks about a real possibility in the past. Now let us discuss memory tricks. How can you easily remember the difference? Here is a simple trick. Ask yourself this question. Is the situation real or imaginary? If it is real or possibly true, use was. If it is imaginary, impossible, or hypothetical, use were. Very simple. Real equals was. Imaginary equals were. Repeat this in your mind. Real equals was. Imaginary equals were. Now let us practice together. I will give you sentences and explain the correct answer. Sentence number 1. If I underscore rich, I would buy a private jet. Should it be was or were? The correct answer is were. Why? Because it is imaginary. Correct sentence. If I were rich, I would buy a private jet. Sentence number 2. If I underscore absent yesterday, I had a good reason. Correct answer was. Because it talks about a real past possibility. Sentence number 3. If she underscore here right now, she would know what to do. Correct answer were. Because the situation is imaginary. Sentence number 4. If he underscore offended by my words, I am sorry. Correct answer was. Because maybe he was actually offended. Excellent. Now let us discuss why native speakers sometimes break this rule. Language changes over time. In casual English, many native speakers use if I was, even for imaginary situations. For example, if I was rich, I would buy a yacht. You may hear this often in movies, songs, and daily conversations. Is it understandable? Yes. Is it grammatically traditional? Not really. In formal English, if I were, is still considered better. So if you are preparing for exams, interviews, academic writing, or professional communication, use if I were for hypothetical situations. Now let us discuss literature and famous expressions. English literature often uses were because it sounds elegant and traditional. For example, if I were king, if I were free, if I were young again. These expressions create imagination and emotion. Writers and poets love this style because it sounds powerful and dramatic. Now let us discuss conditionals because this topic is strongly connected to conditionals. There are different types of conditional sentences in English. Zero conditional for facts. If you heat water, it boils. First conditional for real future possibilities. If it rains, we will stay home. Second conditional for imaginary situations. If I were rich, I would travel the world. Third conditional for unreal past situations. If I had studied harder, I would have passed. Notice something important. The second conditional usually uses were. For example, if he was smarter, he would understand. This is one reason why if I were is so important in grammar. Now let us compare emotional tone again. Listen carefully. If I was rude, this sounds apologetic and realistic. If I were rich, this sounds dreamy and imaginative. One looks backward at reality. The other looks toward imagination. Now let us practice advanced examples. Example 1. If I were in your position, I would remain calm. This sounds professional and wise. Example 2. If I was responsible for the confusion, I apologize sincerely. This sounds formal and respectful. Example 3. If I were capable of changing the past, I would fix my mistakes. This is philosophical and emotional. Example 4. If I was too emotional yesterday, forgive me. This reflects on real behavior. Example 5. If I were given another chance, I would work harder. This talks about a hypothetical opportunity. Now let us discuss spoken English tips. In fast spoken English, native speakers often shorten these sentences. For example, if I were you. Understanding this rule helps you score better in grammar sections and improve your writing band. Now let us discuss another important phrase. I wish. When we use wish for unreal situations, we also usually use were. For example, I wish I were taller. I wish she were here. I wish it were easier. Again, these are imaginary or unreal situations. This is another reason why were is associated with imagination. Now let us compare wish and if. If I were rich, I would travel. I wish I were rich. Both sentences express unreal desires. Now let us discuss common daily life examples. At school, if I were smarter, I would get better grades. At work, if I were the boss, I would improve the office environment. In relationships, if I were more patient, our communication would improve. In dreams, if I were famous, I would use my influence positively. These sentences are extremely common in natural English. Now let us do another quick exercise. Choose the correct answer. Number 1. If I underscore wrong, please forgive me. Correct answer was, because it is a possible real mistake. Number 2. If I underscore invisible, I would travel freely. Correct answer were, because becoming invisible is imaginary. Number 3. If she underscore upset yesterday, I did not notice. Correct answer was number 4. If he underscore more confident, he would become a great leader. Correct answer were excellent. Now let us discuss a cultural point. Many songs and movies use if I was because it sounds natural in casual speech. But formal grammar books still teach if I were. So both exist in modern English, but their usage depends on context. Formal grammar prefers if I were. Casual conversation may allow if I was. As an English learner, knowing the difference gives you control over your language. Now let us discuss fluency practice. Repeat these sentences after me. If I were rich, I would travel the world. If I were you, I would stay calm. If I was rude yesterday, I apologize. If I was unclear, let me explain again. Practice these sentences slowly and clearly. Repetition improves fluency. Now let us discuss the psychology of hypothetical language. Human beings naturally imagine different realities. We imagine success. We imagine failure. We imagine different lives. We imagine impossible situations. This is why hypothetical grammar is so powerful. English uses were to signal imagination. That small word immediately tells listeners this situation is not real. It is imagined. That is why grammar is not only about rules. Grammar also communicates meaning and emotion. Now let us move toward advanced understanding. Sometimes both was and were are possible, but the meaning slightly changes. For example, if I was rude, I apologize. This means maybe I was rude in reality. Now listen carefully. If I were rude, people would avoid me. This does not mean the speaker was rude. It imagines a situation. So grammar changes meaning. This is why small grammar choices are important. Now let us summarize everything clearly. Use if I was for real or possible past situations. Examples: if I was late, if I was rude, if I was unclear. Use if I were for imaginary, hypothetical, impossible, or unreal situations. Examples: if I were rich, if I were you, if I were famous. Remember the golden rule. Real equals was. Imaginary equals were. Now before we finish, Let me give you one final challenge question. Which sentence sounds more grammatically correct? If I was the king, I would change the law. Or, if I were the king, I would change the law. The correct formal answer is, if I were the king, I would change the law. Because the speaker is imagining an unreal situation. Excellent work, everyone. Today you learned one of the most confusing but important differences in English grammar. You learned the meaning, structure, pronunciation, emotional tone, formal and informal usage, conditional grammar, common mistakes, and real-life examples of if I was and if I were. The more you practice these structures, the more natural and fluent your English will become. Thank you so much for watching and learning with me today. If you enjoyed this lesson and found it helpful, make sure to support the channel and continue practicing your English every single day. And now let me ask you one final question before you leave. If you were completely fluent in English, what would you do differently in your life?